Hello everyone. My name is Reza, and I am a PhD student at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Today, I am going to present to you our latest work about gamification, which is entitled "When Gamification Spoils Your Learning." But what is gamification? Most people enjoy playing games, right? Who doesn't like playing games? In some cultures and societies, it is often believed that human beings are born gamers by nature. In fact, it is this psychological predisposition to play games that motivates many learning applications to use some form of gamification to enhance user learning. In very simple terms, gamification is the use of game design elements such as badges, points, and leaderboards in non-game context. For example, in this figure, you can see the gamification inside the learning application of Duolingo. Learners can go there and answer some multiple choice questions and learn languages and then rank up in a leaderboard and also gain badges. However, gamification techniques are not always successful. Gamification misuse is an important phenomenon that occurs when users become too fixated on gamification and get distracted from learning. This undesirable phenomenon wastes users' precious time and negatively impacts their learning performance. However, there has been little research in the literature to understand gamification misuse and inform future gamification designs. In fact, most studies have focused only on the positive aspects of gamification. Therefore, this paper aims to fill this knowledge gap by conducting the first extensive qualitative research on gamification misuse in the popular learning application of Duolingo. Duolingo is currently the world's most downloaded learning application used to learn languages. To be a little bit more specific, our study is guided by the following three research questions. Research question number 1, how do learners perceive and experience the ramifications of gamification misuse? Research question number 2, what factors lead learners to misuse gamification in a learning application in the first place? Research question number 3, how can gamification designers and practitioners deal with the problem of gamification misuse? Our study consists of 2 steps to answer these research questions. In step 1, we conduct a comprehensive content analysis of data from Duolingo forums from the past 9 years. And in step 2, we conduct semi-structured interviews with 15 international Duolingo users. Our paper makes 3 important contributions to the HCI research community in general and learning at scale research community in particular. Number 1, we present the first qualitative research on the overlooked problem of gamification misuse in learning. Our research adds in-depth insights into the dark side of gamification in learning and thus contributes to the diversity of theories in HCI and learning at scale. And number 3, we introduce some new design and research opportunities for the future use of gamification in learning. But let's talk a little bit more about our methodology. We employ content analysis because it can classify and summarize the views of a larger number of users for whom access is not otherwise available. And given that content analysis is a non-reactive research method, it can be used to unobtrusively understand the most candid and honest opinions of users. Because just think about it, the users have already put their ideas into these forums and we just go and study what they have already input there. So we are not provoking them to say anything. After obtaining IRB approval or the ethical approval from HKUST, which is our university, and consent from Duolingo company, to use their publicly available data, we collected more than 30,000 pieces of text from Duolingo's discussion forums to conduct our study. I would like to emphasize here that 30,000 pieces of text is really a huge number of qualitative data for such a study. We adopt an integrated deductive and inductive approach to carry out our thematic analysis and investigate the qualitative data. We utilize a qualitative analysis application that is called atlas.t to sort out and organize our findings. In the figure, you can see one of our discussion boards in which me and my colleagues were discussing about the themes that were emerging from our qualitative data. However, we all know that content analysis alone might not be sufficient. So to triangulate our prior findings and seek any other themes that may have been omitted owing to the restrictions of the text-based content, we complemented our study by conducting a series of semi-structured interviews with 15 international Duolingo users. Notably, recruiting participants with the experience of misusing gamification and soliciting their opinions is something really, really challenging. It's because when users do something unruly, such as misusing gamification, they usually prefer to hide it or not talk about it. So that was actually one of the challenges of our research. In this table, we can see the demographics of our participants, in which you can see our participants are coming from a very, very different and wide range of backgrounds and demographics. But what are our findings? According to our findings, users complain primarily about their learning experiences, well-being, and the ethical issues involved. For example, in the category of reduced learning, some users say that the misuse has decreased their confidence in learning and dulled their interest in gaining knowledge. And on the other side, we have the poor well-being, which you can see can be categorized into psychological well-being issues and the physical well-being issues. The psychological well-being issues include disappointment, apprehension, and self-recrimination. And the physical well-being issues are physical health problems that come with the addiction to the gamification and disruption of daily life routines. Also, some users think that the misuse is a threat for learning ethics as well. It makes the learning environment unfair, because imagine that someone is cheating to just rank up in the leaderboard. It makes the environment unfair for those who are playing fair in the environment. And also, this type of actually misuse can be an advocate for the misconduct in learning, especially since it sets a bad example for the youngsters who are using the application. I provided some quotes here just to actually familiarize you with the context. For example, one user says that it is very difficult to not get stressed over the leagues in the Duolingo and worry about if I will advance or not, instead of focusing on what is the purpose of this application, Duolingo, which is learning languages. Another user says that I was in a quandary. I wanted to learn, not compete. I would find myself practicing until 3 a.m. after 6 or 7 hours because I fell into the competitive trap. I was suffering from repetitive strain in my wrist and shoulder. Crazy. According to our findings, there are active reasons and passive reasons behind gamification misuse. We define active reasons for gamification misuse as those reasons for which users acknowledge their own agency, control, or direct responsibility. For example, the desire for being competitiveness, overindulgence in playfulness. Some people were thinking of gamification as games and were totally immersed into it, thinking of it as a game, and challenge the system. Some people wanted to hack the system just to show off their IT skills. And we define the passive reasons as those reasons that indirectly manipulate users' behavior to misuse gamification. In some cases, in our study, users are not even aware of their misusing behavior until they notice it later. For example, dark nudges of gamification, which is associated with the nudge theory, compulsion, and herding. Some sample quotes just to actually familiarize you with the context, and we have provided more detailed explanations inside the paper. I'm not going to talk about those to save time. So active reason is one of the users says, I initially was spurred by the capability to outrank other users, and I made sure to climb the leaderboard until I reached the Ruby League, which is one of the leagues inside the Duolingo application. The entire time, I was striving to rank up. I didn't even care about what I was learning. The only thing I cared about was beating out the other users. So we can see how toxic actually this situation is. In another actually explanation, another user is saying, it is so disheartening to be demoted from the Diamond League because you only scored 800 points that week, especially when a daily goal of 50 XP is considered extreme according to Duolingo's own daily goal suggestions. So we can see that this user has done his or her job. However, that user again is demoted because this user is not as competitive as the others. And this is really something bad because the users will feel disappointed about such scenarios. There are many more examples I can also provide if you want in the Q&A. So there are some suggestions for the practitioners and gamification designers who are working on the learning applications. These are 4 distinct themes that we have extracted according to users' suggestions. Number 1, personalization and customization. Number 2, revision of gamification mechanics and dynamics. Number 3, crowdsourced detection of gamification misuse. And number four, informing and guiding users. I have provided some highlights here, but there are more extensive actual explanation inside the paper. In the personalization and customization, we have that leaderboards should consider users' compatibility. Because right now, if you just go to the application of Duolingo, you will see that they have some shared leaderboards in which people of different demographics, people who are learning different languages or at different ages are competing against each other. And that is not something really good. Imagine that a kid is learning ABCD in a, for example, I just make it up, Spanish language, and another, for example, adult is learning the advanced Arabic language. So these are compared together, and that's not something desirable, and some people were against it. Some other people were saying that gamification should become optional inside the learning applications. There is actually a very huge urge inside these applications to make the gamification attributes optional, because not everyone is interested in gamification. Second is revision of gamification mechanics and dynamics. Learning applications should plan for more than just the behavioral engagement. In fact, according to our findings, it is suggested that the designers also think about engaging users emotionally and cognitively. And these are even more important than the behavioral engagement. Imagine that gamification is just asking people just to click on one maybe button. So that might not be very productive at the end of the day. But if you engage your audiences, your students, emotionally and cognitively, it might be more profitable for their learning. And gamification should also encourage users to progress. Imagine that actually the Duolingo has now fixed this, but there was a time when Duolingo was awarding the equal amount of XP for doing the very basic lessons inside a language. For example, you always do ABCD, you get equal amount of XP as doing the last course inside this application. So that is not good. There should always be motivation for people to progress and move forward and do not stagnate. So that was another point we identified. And number 3 is that crowdsourced detection of gamification misuse. Abnormal behaviors do not alone provide sufficient or satisfactory evidence for identifying the instances of misuse. In these scenarios, users can come to help of AI algorithms, which are commonly used inside these applications, by identifying different instances of gamification misuse more reliably. Imagine that you are using the application 7 hours, okay? That alone does not indicate that you are misusing gamification. But when actually a user is coming and explaining more maybe emotional and psychological aspects of being attached to gamification and why actually that particular instance is a misuse, you can more reliably label that data sample as a misuse of gamification. So just do not look at the data alone to say that this is 6 hours of using application, this is definitely misuse. No, that's not true. And finally, informing and guiding users. We find that not every user knows why they have the urge to misuse gamification and why gamification misuse is bad. And as we also said, some don't even know what gamification is, especially the youngsters, and they might confuse it with pure games, totally ignoring the learning aspect attached to this type of maybe incentivization. So in these scenarios, according to people, there might be need for a mentor to support students, especially the youngsters, along the way in their learning journey. In conclusion, in this paper, we looked at the overlooked problem of gamification misuse in Duolingo, the world's most popular learning application. We studied the misusing behavior from users' perspectives from 3 aspects. In research question 1, we look at the negative effects they have experienced. In research question 2, we look at the reasons for their behavior, misusing behavior. And finally, in research question number 3, we looked at some of the suggestions they were providing for practitioners and gamification designers who are working in learning applications. Finally, we believe that our paper can serve as an important reference in the HCI and learning at scale communities for understanding the problem of gamification misuse in learning applications and probably help them to come with some solutions, practical solutions to address those issues. So this is the conclusion for our paper. Thank you so much for your attention. And if there are any questions, I would be glad to answer.
Thank you, Reza.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you for this work. It's really interesting and really needed. Do you have an estimate from your work so far as to what proportion of users end up engaging in misuse of gamification?
Yeah, we have. Actually, we have found out the exact number and mentioned it in our paper. I think it should be below 20% inside the Duolingo application. But for the exact number, maybe look at the paper. But actually, this is a very small number, and not they are in the minority, those people who are misusing gamification. However, the effects are very actually significant. That's why actually we were interested to bring it up and discuss it. Because although there are these people who are misusing gamification are in minority, the impacts they are playing, the impact actually misusing has on their own learning and the learning of other people is very significant, and that actually motivated us to research this actually direction for our work. Thank you so much for your question. Any other questions?
Hi, thank you for your interesting talk. I was really intrigued about how you tried to triangulate your findings by analyzing the leaderboard and not the discussion board, and also getting the 15 interviewers. I was wondering how you identified those 15 people to interview and how did you contact them? Because you first said you used open data from Duolingo. So how did you get to those 15 users?
Yeah, thank you so much for your question. Actually, it was very challenging. So we posted on, we initially posted on Duolingo website and its forums just to directly encourage people to participate in our study. And we were also, after getting some people, we were using the snowball sampling technique to get our other participants. And we also posted our flyers into platforms like Facebook and also WeChat, I believe. Yeah, we sent out there and also tried to find some people from there. But most of our participants are coming from the flyers we have distributed to the Duolingo application itself.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. Yanis Anastasopoulos from Berkeley here. And I wanted to ask, at the end you mentioned that some students, especially younger students, get fully dragged into this idea of the game. So where would you recommend we draw the line between gamification meant to encourage interaction with the system and just, I guess, gamification that goes too far and makes younger students not focus on the actual learning?
Yeah, that actually goes into category of maybe customization and personalization advices we are provided inside our paper. So we need to know the needs of our students, and we also need to know what kind of maybe cognitive skills they have, what kind of emotional supports they need, and how actually games might actually influence them. So all of these things should be analyzed, and then we can probably customize and personalize the system. There are also some very good surveys inside the literature review. For example, there's something called Hexad player types. I don't know if you have heard about it or not. It actually basically categorizes people's interest into gamification into different categories. For example, some people are achievers. They need to, for example, achieve the final goal inside the gamified application. Some people are maybe competitors. I'm just actually not sure about the exact terms that is used in the exact typology, but actually different users have different interests in different aspects of gamification. Those things should also be considered when we are actually designing gamification for our audiences. But for the youngsters, I think that there should be even more care, and maybe there should be consultation with experts to understand their emotional and cognitive needs and how gamification is going to affect their maybe experiences in these applications and their learning, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question.
Megan, you can unmute.
Fantastic, thank you. I really enjoyed this, so thank you so much. Reza, did you see any evidence of either the boomerang effect, where high performers, when we tell them they're high performers relative to their peers, they tend to back off, or conversely, the impact of being told that you're a low performing user because you can just see how far down on the leaderboard you are? Did you find that as a demotivator, or was that something that really was tangential to what you were looking at?
Sorry, I don't know what the boomerang effect is. Could you please?
Sure. Sometimes for example, in workplace job reviews or performance reviews, when you tell someone that, wow, you are doing so much better than your peers, they actually reduce their performance afterwards. So it's great to tell them they're doing okay, but not that they're overclocked on the performance. Do you see any of that in this kind of gamification?
Yeah, actually, as people become more get more immersed into these actually gamified aspects of these platforms, and as they do more well, it's becoming more harder for them to maybe lose 1 point. For example, even if you're on top of the leaderboard and one day you wake up and you see you have 1 over before the actually the ranks on the leaderboard are finalized, some people were mentioning that they are even willing to do cheating to preserve their ranking on the system. So that is something we learned from actually our participants, that such things were happening. So the more you are becoming attached, the higher you go in the gamification system, it might become more difficult to actually accept that, okay, one day I might go to the bottom of the leaderboard. So those people are especially becoming likely to do misuse of the gamification. Did I answer your question?
Yes, yes, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for
your
your question.
One final question, and Karen, you can start setting up.
Hi, Reza. Thank you for that presentation. Just a quick question. Since it seemed like you were working in collaboration with Duolingo, have you shared these findings with them? And all of these potential, like all of these misuses that you have uncovered and reported here, like how much of that was already known to them a priori that these could be potential consequences, or are these all unanticipated consequences of their design?
Yeah, thank you so much. No, actually, we are not funded by Duolingo. I just myself emailed Duolingo company, and they kindly directed me to their legal team. And we get permission from them to use their dataset. But no, because we were not funded by Duolingo, we didn't get a chance to discuss our findings with the Duolingo company. But we would become very happy to share our findings with Duolingo or even other learning applications, of course. Did I answer your question? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.